As you've learned already, evaluations can be more objective or subjective, depending on criteria and what is being evaluated. While evaluating if a movie is good to you personally might be subjective, other types of evaluation are less nuanced. Since you will be expected to find and analyze science-based research for essays 3 and 4, I want to start discussing what we will be looking at when it comes to fact-based, science-based research. In order to do this, I first have to create some criteria for what makes a credible source. To come up with my criteria, I had to consider what I look for in a credible source. While the easiest way to find quality research is to use databases like the one we have in the library, it is also important to be able to evaluate other types of sources that are not already vetted for us. The first criteria I will be looking for in my sources is that the article or research has a named author. The reason this is important is because quality research requires a lot of work. And if no one is taking credit, it makes me think that either the information is stolen from another platform or it isn't great information to begin with. The exception to this would be a government site or a large entity like the Pew Research Center that often publish data collected and processed by large groups of scientists, so there is no single author on record. Example here, we have some data collected by the National Center for Education Statistics. So this would be a good example of a credible source that doesn't have a named author, but is clearly done by a group of scientists who are collecting data from around the country. For our second example here, we have an article by Best Colleges, and there is no named author for this one. So this is the type of article that we do want to avoid because no one is taking credit for this article. The second criteria I will be looking for is that the information in the article is either directly from a primary source, like what we find in the library databases or Google Scholar, or if it is a secondary source, it cites its primary sources or links to them within the article. Any claims that are made need to be supported by research. If not, this is an opinion piece and does not count as research. To give you an example of this, we are going to look at this article that claims to be about the positive impacts of online learning. The article itself, there is no research mentioned or links to studies that the author used to come up with these claims. Even though it looks credible, it is just an opinion piece and does not count as valid evidence or support. The third criteria I will be looking for is that the article or research is less than 5 years old. This is especially important when we are talking about ongoing and evolving topics. The exception to this rule would be events that have already occurred and that there is no new information coming out about. For example, if you're writing a history paper and wanted data on the smallpox outbreak in the 1960s, you're going to be using older sources, and that's fine. But in the same vein, an article about COVID published in 2020 is going to be very outdated, even though it's only a couple years old. Basically, unless we are talking about history, try and find recent sources. To give you an example of this, we have here an article published in The Economist, an often credible source. However, the topic of online learning is one that is constantly changing, and an article written in 2014 is going to be very outdated and missing nearly a decade of current research. Our final criteria for a great source is that the site you are getting your information from is not trying to sell you something. This isn't so much an issue with primary sources, since they are coming from scientific journals and universities, but with secondary sources, this is going to be more of a problem and something you want to look out for. To give you an example of this, we have here an article published by an online for-profit college that specializes in management and hospitality. Beyond the conflict of interest that comes from an online university writing about the benefits of online learning, there is also no named author, so we have 2 reasons not to trust this source. Let's go over the checklist for a credible and fact-based source. 1, there should be a named author. 2, the information is directly from a primary source or taken from science-based studies or data. 3, it is less than 5 years old. And 4, the site is not trying to sell you another service. Now that you have this checklist, you should be able to find your own research articles. If you ever have questions about a source, feel free to send me the link and I will be happy to help.